Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Then check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something to inspire you. That's deal2healteas.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to deal2healteas.com. Again, that's deal2healteas.com. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, heal, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share to our YouTube channel, our podcast on all of your social media platforms, including our new YouTube channel. So formerly we were the Deal to Heal podcast on YouTube, but we changed our channel to the Deal to Heal podcasting network because now we have multiple podcasts that we have to offer you guys to check out. So make sure you're checking us out to make sure you subscribe and listen to our podcast on the Deal to Heal podcasting network on YouTube. Also, make sure you guys check out our partner podcast, which is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. On that podcast, me and my fellow girl dads talk about the relationship between the dad and our daughters. And also every now and then we have a daughter on to talk about her relationship with her father. I think it is very important for this podcast because it combats the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. So make sure you guys go there to the YouTube channel to check out that, as well as on all of your podcast listening platforms. Also, our product of the week. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase in order for us to help to pay our bills. So our product of the week is our Purpose Journal, as well as our Purpose Planner, because I believe that we need to journal our lives to be able to keep track of where we've been and where we are, as well as plan for our future. So you guys can get your copy of the Purpose Journal and the Purpose Planner from Amazon. The links is in the description below. So make sure you guys go and check that out. Again, thank you guys for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. So we're going to jump right in it today. Just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Mr. Mannie. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me on here.
No problem, man. First of all, I want to say thank you for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So we're going to jump right in, Mannie. one thing that I know from a previous conversation before we started recording is that you are a girl dad as like myself. And so just like I do with every other girl dad, I'm gonna start this thing off by asking you two questions. One question is, what does it mean to you to be a girl dad? And then number two, what is something that your daughter has taught you?
Oh man, being a girl dad is definitely different. So my daughter is my oldest, and she is like 4.5. I also have a son that's 2.5. So being a girl dad, it's definitely a different experience. She's taught me to make sure I'm very aware of my feelings and
Mhm.
how I am portraying those feelings. Because one thing I've learned with the kids is they're like a mirror. The
Yeah.
however you treat them, like they're gonna have those same mannerisms, and you're gonna see it right there. So I guess definitely being much more aware and being much more understanding, and kind of the kind of girl side of things is being much more in tune with my emotions and having that understanding and making sure I'm very aware of how she's feeling as I approach her. So that's been one of the biggest things she's taught me, and I guess she's also brought a softness to me as well.
Yeah. All right, all right. You said four. Man, my daughter is turned 21 this year. So
Oh wow.
I'm on the other side of it, right? I'm on the other side of that journey. It's been a long time to get away from four.
Uh-huh.
But we're gonna jump right into this thing, Manny. Do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience and tell us who you are and a little bit about what you do.
All right. My full name is Manuel Antonio Canto. I go by Manny. I'm first generation American. My family is from Central America, so my mom's from Honduras and my dad's from Belize. So quite a diverse background. I guess my profession, I'm an engineer. I got my degree in electrical engineering, and right now I'm a program manager at Lockheed Martin, working on a couple of different programs that do sensors. And one of the things that I've learned through my life and my journey, especially on being an engineer, is there's just a lot of things that happen that are going to be unexpected. You're going to fail at doing things. So with engineering, kind of like with life, you're going to come up with a lot of challenges that you have to figure out a way to work through, and you're not going to be able to solve them the first time. So you're going to have to deal with a lot of setbacks, feeling maybe like you don't know what you're doing, having a hard time figuring things out. And that was just a lot of my journey of kind of building resilience, overcoming a lot of different failures to kind of get where I am now.
Yeah, and we I wanna jump right actually kind of jump right in there with your story because it kind of mirrors mine in a sense. Definitely starting off myself at an early age and failing. I actually
Hmm.
failed second grade, but it was such a turning point in my life because it was from that I changed and began to get this drive, and I kind of got it from my father, but I got this drive to excel and do better, becoming an honor roll student, what is that, student of the month, and all of those things, and really just changed my life around from that failure. So let's go back to even that time, yourself and the early days of education, or your early days of who you are and dealing with your own failures that kind of led you into doing the work that you do now, as a speaker. Because I know you mentioned about being an engineer, but you're also a
Hmm.
speaker and talk to other students and people about overcoming some of the same things that you dealt with. So take us back to the earlier version of yourself, even in the midst of dealing with those things then, and some of the lessons that you learned that change you as a person to be able to say, now I'm going to go and help someone else get over those same hurdles.
Oh yeah, there's quite a history in all the different stages of my life, kind of going through like that. So I know in third grade, the school I was at, they actually had to test me because I was having so many problems in class, and they gave me a test, and they actually found out my reading level was like actually way beyond what it was. I just had a hard problem understanding how to, I guess, comprehend the information in a way they were teaching it. So when you're, a kid that young, you're thinking, oh, I don't get this. And that kind of progressed because I had to actually repeat sixth grade. So sixth grade, repeating it at the same school, you see all your other people that you were in the same class with, and then now they're in a grade ahead. You're having to redo all these same classes. And ironically, the classes I had to repeat were because I failed English and history, which you don't do a lot of as an engineer, because it's mainly math and science focused. But I've learned an appreciation for English and history now, and a lot of it is just sometimes when you're younger, you solely focus on the things you like and the things that you're good at because you want to gravitate towards those things. And I guess I had to understand from an early age, you have to be able to overcome the things that come harder to you. And at a certain point, you have to, I guess, deal with it and make sure you understand how to get through those things. So, I mean, I learned from a long time ago. I think it was around that sixth grade period of time is when I really wanted to be an engineer. And I started letting that curiosity take over and start, I would take my dad's electronics apart, take things out like that. So I definitely get in a lot of trouble, but, it wound up me because I wanted to figure things out.
Yeah. And I can vouch for even that feeling of, when I failed, even though it's as young as I was very aware of what was going on, around me, and, being able to see not just my friends that went to the same school as me, but, my family and my cousins and friends that was the same age as me, that I hung out with outside of school, just to see them progress. Now, again, I'm a year behind. So even began to play out in different things that we were able to do, going on field trips and things like that, where they would all go on, the field trip for that grade, but I couldn't go because I was a grade behind, So all of those things, all the way up until our eighth grade graduation, like they all graduated a year before me, and so I definitely could understand that feeling of, watching your peers, move forward, even though I was moving at the same pace, but I still was a year behind now, which kind of gave me a whole nother gear and feeling like, okay, I got to catch up, because now I'm always feeling behind. No matter how good I was, like I said, I became an honor roll student, but I still was a year behind everyone else, even though I was on the honor roll. So I definitely can comprehend that feeling of, watching everyone move forward, but you still held back, And so I want to believe that even going through that space that you were in, that began to build a part of you. Again, like you said, it was that moment that made you want to say, okay, let me change this up and kind of open up that curiosity. But even with that, I'm sure that there was a part of resistance probably, and persistence, that kicked in around that time, to help take you to that next level. Was like, all right, I got to do something different and stay at it, even when things are not going maybe the way that I thought they could go or should go at that time. So how did that persistence that you found during that time period, how did that play a part into even helping you to become the person that you are now? And what was that moment where you said, after you got to a certain point, they're like, okay, now I'm going to reach back out to people who may be going through the same things that I went through, and now begin to help them?
Yeah, well, there's quite a bit of every time you think about you had this challenging time in your life, and it's just like you immediately turn it around from that point on. A lot of times it's not like that. You tend to still have to overcome things. So for me, I actually had to go to summer school, 7th and 8th grade after that. And then in high school, I managed to pick it up a lot. I was kind of in the back of my head aware that once you hit high school, I know it counts towards like college. So, you understand there's the kind of like a sense of urgency that you have that this is going to impact things I'm doing in the future. So I actually did pretty well through high school. But the thing that I struggled with was studying. So in high school, especially in public schools, they'll go at a slower pace so that all the students can understand. So I'd be able to just show up in class, kind of listen. And it's just like, okay, yeah, I got it. And I was a pretty good test taker most of the time. So I was able to go through high school really well. That does not translate well in college. So I was actually, I went to LSU, Louisiana State University, as a freshman. I'd been out on my own. Had an apartment that I shared with my best friend from high school. We wound up having the apartment that everybody just goes and hangs out at because we had the biggest place. So we would have random people always stopping by. And it was at the end of my freshman year. I'm in my apartment. It's May. We had just finished finals. One thing I realized that I never did was I never changed the mailing address from my university to my apartment. It was still my parents' house, which was about an hour away. So I'm just kind of hanging out. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do, where I'm going to live. And then I just hear a knock on the door one day. And I go over, I open the door, and my dad's standing at the doorway. And he hands me a piece of paper of a letter he got in the mail. And it's a letter from the university saying that I've been academically dismissed. And the second piece of paper was my grades, which I wound up with a 0.7 GPA at the end of my freshman year. And, my dad, he was in the Air Force. He's he was born in another country. So, back then they had a different form of discipline than we typically do today. And so, I'm kind of deathly afraid. My dad was also a 4th degree black belt in Cook School 1. I had seen him, he would practice street fights. So my dad is a very tough guy. But he just kind of looked at me, and I think this was the thing that kind of hit me the most, was he looked at me. He was like, I don't know what you're doing up here, but I didn't raise you to do this. And he asked me for the keys to my car. And he took the keys, was walking away, was like, I'm not sure what you're going to do, but you're going to have to figure out something. And he left, pulled out the car, left. He was helping me pay for my apartment. And that was at the last couple of weeks before my lease was up. So I didn't really have a place to live. I didn't have a vehicle because he just took it. And I wasn't enrolled in school. And, I'm very big on family. And so, I'd fractured, the relationship I had with my parents just because I was messing around at school, wasn't paying attention. And that was the low of lows, where I just sat and I couldn't even process what was going on. But, I just started developing a couple philosophies out of there of okay, well, what am I going to do? I need a place to live. I need to do all these things. So I actually went to the apartment complex and was like, hey, I pretty much explained to him, I was like, I don't have a place to live. I don't know what to do. And it just so happened that they were looking for people to work at the apartment complex. And so I was like, okay, well, I can do that. And I wound up getting a job to where I at least had a place to live. And then one of my best friends, he was actually in the Marine Corps at boot camp, and he had an old beat up truck that he let me use. So I started driving that truck around. That would, most of the time it would give me from point A to B. It ran well enough. And then enrolled myself into a community college. And from that point on, because I had to work, a couple of jobs just to make sure I was making ends meet. And, my parents are very hard workers. So it taught me a lot of lessons of, what do I want my life to look like? Do I want to be working multiple jobs, barely making ends meet, not enough time or freedom to be able to do the things that I want? And then, like I said, I always had the curiosity in electronics, and I knew I wanted to be an engineer. It's I wanted to be able to go explore that. So I had to change my whole philosophy, because I was like, I know what it feels like to fail and not try your best. Now I want to know what it's like to actually go out, try your best, give your all, and see what I can accomplish. So that led me on this journey to I eventually actually graduated college. I was actually also a kicker and punter in school, and then graduated with honors within electrical engineering.
All right. I'm listening to you tell the story about your dad, and I'm just reflecting back on myself, because that was sort of the same thing that happened with me, even back then. So I always tell the story that, when back then, when I was in second grade, now this is, years ago, I think this probably was in the 80s at this time. But that's when we had actual report cards, right? When they're like, your grades literally came on a card, that your teacher would fill out. And I remember that time period, just being, there was a kid in my class who was like the class clown, and so he was like my best friend. So I'm like, whatever he did, I was doing, and not, paying attention, not doing my work, and it got to the end of the school year, And my teacher basically was like, well, I don't want to fail both of you guys, so one of you guys are going to fail and one of you guys is going to pass. And I was the one that she failed. And so I remember knowing like, okay, I'm going to have to do this grade over again. But not only that, I got to answer to my dad. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember that day we're standing in the living room of our home, and like you said, back then there was a different kind of punishment these days. So my dad is standing there and he has my report card in one hand and he has his belt in the other hand,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm standing there and I always say my dad gave me the worstest whooping I ever got in my life that day, but he never hit me one time.
Mm-hmm.
But instead,
Yeah.
he started talking to me and he said 4 words that changed my life forever. He said, "I'm disappointed in you." And as he began to talk to me about, not only representing him, because I'm junior, I'm Ernest Jr., he's Ernest Senior. He's like, you have my
Mm-hmm.
name, you have your family's name. My dad was in the Air Force. He was an Air Force mechanic, so
Mm-hmm.
he was in the service
Mine
also.
too. Yeah.
And so it was just, he really just was like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Because he went to college. My mom went to college. They were very big on education and big on reading. So all of their kids had high reading levels. We were very intelligent. And it was like, I know you just didn't put the effort in,
Mm-hmm.
and it just got to the point where I could literally see the tears in his eyes and he turned his back to me and was like, just go to your room. And I think that hurt me more than probably if he would have gave me a physical punishment.
Oh yeah, definitely. Sometimes you're
Yeah,
just like, "Where's the spanking? I'm ready for it,"
right.
and they don't give that to you, and it's even worse. And one of the things that I have an appreciation for now that I'm a parent, that I don't know how he did that or had the wisdom to, was, you want so much for your kids to succeed and you know what they're capable of and you want to give them everything. So now looking back on it from the viewpoint of being a parent, the ability to be able to say, okay, you need to go figure this out on your own. You have to learn, you have to grow up to let your child do that, regardless of like the age. It's really hard. It's a different perspective now than I'm a parent.
Yeah. And that definitely was a turning point in my life, because from when I left that room and went to my room, I remember vividly saying to myself, never again will I hear my dad say, "I'm disappointed in you." And so that became my why. That became my driving force from that day forward, through school, again, becoming an honor roll student, out of that in grammar school, getting to high school and realizing that, still feeling behind because I'm a year behind everyone else. And I'm like, I want to graduate with my right grade, and so I sat down and developed a plan, laid out all my classes, everything I needed to take in order to graduate high school in 3 years instead of 4, and I was able to put it into action and actually do it, and so I remember graduating my high school class as a junior. Everyone else was seniors, but I was able to walk and graduate that year with my rightful grade, and my family and friends that were the same age as me, but that was such a turning point, because my dad, again, just like as every kid, especially me, I was junior, my thing was to make my dad proud, and I remember him taking me everywhere, and everybody saying like, that's little EJ, you know what I'm saying? And having that relationship, like, I'm the mini part of him, and then to face the failures that I did, not because, I just failed, but because I wasn't putting in the work, him being able to see like, no, I know it's more to you than that, and so that became my driving force. Like, I want to make my dad proud, and as well as, succeed for myself, but even more than for myself, it was so that I never hear those words again, that he was disappointed in me. And it definitely made a difference in my life, even to today, with some of the things that I do. And he's heard this story. I always told him, I don't know if he remembered that day, like I remember it, because I remember it vividly, but I've told the story in front of him before on different stages and things. And so he's heard it from my point of view. And, like I said, I don't know how monumental that day was for him, but it definitely made a difference in my life.
Oh yeah, it's the same thing has happened. My dad's gotten to hear me speak. I got to speak at a couple of different like local schools around here, and one of the times he was in town. We've kind of like our relationship has gotten better again. He's definitely part of my life. He's a very active grandparent. So him and my mom, when they're retired, they come visit all the time. But they got to hear me speak, and it was. I don't think it was as impactful for him, but from his point of view, he remembered. He was just like, "Yeah, I know what you're capable of, and I knew that whatever you put your mind to, you can do it." And looking back on it, then it was just like those were lessons that, as you're growing up, and you have like your father figure there that's setting the example for you. He was very hardworking. We have the same name also. So they call me Manuelito, which means little Manuel. So, you feel like you have those kind of things to live up to, and you want to make sure you're, giving your best effort. But a lot of times, you need to be able to kind of hit that rock bottom to be able to start building like the foundation of who you are and understanding how to move forward. Just because that's how I felt. It's like the worst I could ever feel or have ever felt was in that moment. But then from there is where I realized, that failure taught me all the lessons I needed to. Because a lot of times we learn more from our failures than we do our successes. Mm-hmm. So sometimes that's one of the things I discovered, when I started sharing my story with people. So many people, like even like, talking to you now, I didn't know that story about where you came from, but so many people have some kind of failure that a lot of times people don't want to talk about it. And so one of the things that I mentioned is like, you gotta use the F word more, and that's fail. Just kind of like, people are afraid to use failure. They're afraid to use the F word. They don't want to face it. It makes them uncomfortable. But the most important thing is, especially in terms of like engineering, when you have like big complex problems, you're going to fail trying to figure those things out on the way. But if you don't attempt it, don't fail, you'll never even get anywhere close. So that's why I'm very big on, you have to be able to share your experiences, share your failures. That way you also learn from not just your failures, but other people's failures as well.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I share my story, all the time, and that's one of the things that I talk about too. Is I said my failure was the foundation of everything that I do now. Mm-hmm. It was the foundation of all of my accomplishments, because it was from that failure that even woke me up to really be like, all right, it's time to really start taking life serious. Mm-hmm. And not only taking it serious, but really thinking about, what do I want my future to be? What do I want my future to look like? And even getting to the point where even when I have these conversations in schools, talking to kids, I talk to them about, I always ask them, what is your plan? What is your plan for your life? Because coming up until, your graduations, especially like high school, all these years, you've been living somebody else's plan. Your parents had the plan for you to go to school. The teachers got a plan for your homework. And, all of that is all laid out for you. But once you hit those last years and you graduate from high school, like there's no plan. You know what I mean? It's like at this point, you're on your own. Like, what are you going to do? And so I always encourage the kids. I try to, especially when I'm able to come in early, like during a freshman year, I always tell them these 4 years is going to go really fast. You think, 4 years, you got time. Like, no, it's going to go really fast. And if you don't have a plan by the end of these 4 years, you're going to be blowing in the wind, And so I really try to press upon them to really start thinking about, okay, what do I want out of my life after high school? And let me start planning for those things now, so I don't end up wasting time, when I get out of high school and now I'm trying to figure it out. Now I got the free time and things like that, and all the other distractions that come with the freedom of not, being in school. But now, if you don't have a plan, that freedom actually become a hindrance, right? That freedom can actually become the cage that holds you down, because you have no direction, right? And so you just like going here and there. And I always tell kids, if you don't have a plan, you'll fall for lessons plan. And lessons plan is all those people that say, let's go do this or let's go do that. Because if you don't have your own plan, the group is going to come up with a plan, right? Your friends is going
Mm-hmm.
to come up with a plan. Your environment is going to come up with a plan. And if you're not strong enough within yourself to follow your own direction, then you'll end up following the plan of someone else, which may get you in some situations that you didn't plan to be in, but you might find yourself in anyway. So definitely,
Yeah.
I always talk about having a plan, for your life.
Yeah, the idea of I like what you said, because that definitely happened to me. I had a friend who, he's still a good friend of mine to this day, but he wasn't on the same path I was. He wasn't interested in, like, doing engineering. He was just kind of in school doing, it was like, oh, maybe I'll do a business degree or something. And a lot of times it wound up being, all right, let's just go hang out and go do stuff over here, instead of actually focusing on, what I want to go off and do, of what I know the next steps of my life I want to be. So that's definitely an important lesson that people need to learn. But I mean, as you're going through, I think that's the big part, is making sure you understand that if you don't have a plan, that moving forward, even if you fail, you can build a foundation at rock bottom.
Mhm.
Is like, I think that's the biggest thing that people are scared of, is that they're always, and then as you fail or things happen, you're always comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah.
Like you said, you mentioned it, you felt it when other people who, you were in the same grade with, you felt like you always had to catch up. I felt the same way. I'm always behind now. And then I get into school, I wish I could have understood that from an earlier age and didn't have to repeat that lesson. But sometimes, we need to kind of establish that to move forward. But something that I heard somebody say is that they don't put start dates on a degree.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of, continuing to progress, and just make sure, you can't really keep comparing yourself to other people. You have to do things in your own time, learn in your own time. Like I said, I wish I would have learned my lesson much sooner, like the first time, and not have to repeat it. But sometimes you need to repeat a lesson to make sure you truly learn it. And that has helped me tremendously from that day forward, to continue to make sure I excel and actually put the full effort in everything that I do now.
Yeah, yeah. And you reminded me of something one of my old pastors used to say, when we're going through different tests in our life, and he would say, we often ask, how long will this test last? And he would say, it'll last until you pass. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so sometimes, unfortunately, we do have to keep taking the same test over and over again. We do have to fail a couple times. We do have to, go through these different lessons over again until we pass it, until we learn what it is that as life is trying to teach us in that moment. We may have to, take it over again, and we can't necessarily be ashamed of that. If we're doing our best, the best that we can in the midst of it, if I'm doing my best and I fail, that's one thing. But if I'm not even trying, I'm not putting forth the effort and I fail just by lack of, my own actions, then that's a whole nother thing. And so as long as we're living in the midst and we're trying to learn the lessons in the midst of what we're going through, then if we have to, take a little extra time to learn it, take a few extra classes. And like you mentioned about going to summer school, that was part of my plan in high school. I'm like, all right, I got to go to
Mm-hmm.
summer school every year, in order to graduate in 3 years, and even that within itself, knowing those sacrifices that you got to make in order to achieve what you're trying to achieve, and sometimes you just got to be like, you know what, I got to do this for me. I got to do this because my dream, my vision for my life is much bigger than this failure. And this failure is only a stepping stone to get me to the next level. One of the things that you mentioned about talking about being able to learn, from the things that you were dealing with and learn from the lessons that you had to go through. But one of the things you mentioned, even on your form that you filled out for the podcast, is learning to learn, right? To be
Mm-hmm.
able to learn, what it is to learn. You know what I'm saying? So tell
Mm-hmm.
us a little bit about that journey and how that worked out for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit. Kind of in life, just like in school, because I typically work with a bunch of college students or early career people in the STEM profession. And one of the things I had to figure out is, well, how do I learn best? Some people, they can sit in a class, they can hear and they can pick it up. Some people, you look at a video and then you see somebody doing it. I'm definitely a learn by doing kind of person. So what I actually wound up doing was I would run study groups. And so I would actually work out the problems for other people, and I would show them, because I knew if I knew how to explain it to somebody else and would do the problem, I actually knew the material. So that's kind of the same thing with life. Sometimes we can see an example and we're like, okay, that's what I need to go off and do. And you can go off and do it. Some of us, like for me, I had to learn by doing. And unfortunately, I had to learn because I went off and I did something, and going through that experience, I knew, okay, well, I shouldn't skip class, or I shouldn't be hanging out with this group of friends. And then you also learn what you're going to do whenever failure comes to you, because no matter what, you're going to come with some kind of obstacle. And one thing I started saying was, when you face an obstacle, it's up to you if you want that to be a stumbling block or a stepping stone. So you need to figure out if, this thing that's in front of you that you need to figure out how to overcome, are you going to let that hold you back for from that point on and not go around it, and you're just going to keep stumbling over it? Or are you going to say, okay, I have this failure in front of me, let me figure out my way to go about doing this? And you kind of test different things, you find out what works for you, and you get a little bit smarter, and you kind of, like I said, learn how to learn, and how you absorb and are able to take the information you get and apply it. And so when you start doing that, you kind of make that a stepping stone, and then you're able to kind of keep moving forward. And, the lessons that you get from that point on, you can apply to the next thing that happens. So it keeps building on each other. And honestly, for me, that becomes what your stairway to success is, regardless if that's through school or in your life itself. You learn from those past experiences that you have.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that has been very helpful for me, and I've even made it a part of my speaking career when I'm able to speak to students, is to be able to get them to start looking into personal development and really learning them parts about themselves that they may not have known, And I know in our circles, we hear about the DISC assessment, and being able to take that and learn those different personality traits that we have as people. And I remember I didn't take it till I was I was in my 30s, when I took the DISC assessment. And it was such a helpful tool for me that I knew then, even with my mindset then of wanted to, I was already being a mentor and things to young boys. And I'm like, if I could get kids in their high school, before they get out of high school or early, late teens, to take this DISC assessment and really begin to find out who they are as a person and get to know themselves, that they can be on a trajectory of success, way earlier than I was, and I was okay. But I just think that once I took that DISC assessment and began to go through personal development and professional development, and really learning who I am, my strengths and my weaknesses, and what environments that I excel in the most. Like I said, I was already in my 30s, and I'm just like, if I had this tool when I was a teenager, to really be able to begin to unlock those parts of myself and the way that I was thinking at an earlier age, I definitely could have been way more farther than I am now, or than I was at the time. And I think that's very important, because that definitely has played a great part in my life now, that personal development and really getting to know myself and knowing what I was capable of, and in that way. And I think that helps even with the students, for not falling into the plan of lessons plan, right? To fall into say, well, let's go do this. It helps you find out who you are and find your voice, so that when less comes and say, the whole group is going this way, you can find your strength and your voice and be like, no, I'm going that way, because that way is what's best for me. And I think that, as we begin to learn ourselves, like you said, and learn, more about ourselves and our strengths and weaknesses, we're able to, move differently as we grow.
Yeah, for me, a lot of things I base, because I'm an engineer, did a lot of STEM. Anytime you have a problem, there's a set of information that you need to look at, and we always need to make sure we're looking at ourselves. And you kind of mentioned the tools that we have. You look at how your personality is. That's information on yourself. How do you use this information to figure out the solution to whatever problem that you're facing? So something like the DISC assessment, now I'm in a leadership role, at work. So I have to understand and deal with lots of different personalities. So I have to very much know myself in order to understand how I'm going to deal with other people. So for me, like, I've done the DISC assessment. I'm definitely a very high I. I'm definitely based on like, how I feel, the relationship I have with somebody. And one of the things that another one that I learned is people also, there's one called the color trait, which is how people communicate their feelings or what their information is. So you start learning not only yourself, but it teaches you how to, assess who other people are. So how you communicate to them. So my wife is very like a very decision maker driven, and I learned how to be able to communicate, how I take in information and understand, okay, well, she's going to take information this way. So a lot of it is just understanding, your perspective with who you are with other people, the information that's available. But it all starts with kind of, making sure you know yourself first. And then you can figure out what's around you to make sure the information that goes out or how you interact with people, you can be most efficient with that.
All right, all right. So Manny, I know, I think you mentioned it earlier, but one of the things that you do, besides the work that you do, is mentorship, a mentor program that you're involved with, maybe even started yourself. So tell us a little bit about that and about, how someone can find out more about that program.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, once I started understanding and talking about my own failures and hearing the experiences of a lot of people. So a large company like Lockheed Martin, I've had the opportunity to be able to interface with, directors, vice presidents, some of the C-suite executives, and a lot of them have gone through failure. So I always want to share with other people, those kind of experiences. So people have, they don't feel discouraged when they kind of come with these obstacles. And so what I started doing was I'm actually in charge of mentoring within Lockheed Martin itself for the Hispanic Organization for Leadership Awareness, or OLA for short. So I'm in charge of like mentoring for that. I also partnered with the University of Central Florida and involved in a program for them that we do mentoring where they get partnered up with like an engineering student gets partnered up with an engineer in industry. And through those experiences, I saw there's just such a high demand of people who are unaware of what a mentor is or mentorship in general. So what I started doing was I started hosting, pretty much every 2 weeks during the school year. I'll do like an hour a night once a week. And I'll have, students and early careers kind of come in and they get to kind of talk through what they're dealing with. I'll give my advice. And it also builds a community of people who are going somewhat similar stage as you are. And you realize you're not alone dealing with these kind of things. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, whenever we're going through a failure, we tend to isolate ourselves and we think, oh, why am I not smart enough to go through this? Why am I struggling through this? And the more you share, the more you realize a lot of people are going through something similar. So for me, building this community helped a lot with, letting people understand that they're not the only ones going through it. A lot of people are dealing with something similar, or a lot of people have dealt with the same thing in their past. So like I said, like I do a once every 2 weeks during the course of the school year. And typically it helps students a lot. We've gotten people who they've gotten internships from the mentoring we've done, gotten jobs, helping with resumes. And then also I've gotten a couple people into grad schools and leadership development programs. So it's been really helpful for a lot of people.
All right, Manny, I want to thank you, man, for coming on and sharing your story and your expertise. I want you to have the last word, and I want you to leave us with a word of advice, inspiration, motivation, however you feel, and also leave us with your social media handles and things of that where we can find you, even be able to follow you or to learn more about your program that you have. So I'll give you a minute to think about that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you guys have ever thought about starting your own podcast, I want you to get your copy of Start Your Podcast Now ebook, which can be found at ebooksbyejames.com. It is a podcast ebook that I wrote because people kept calling me and asking me, how do I start a podcast? And I had helped so many people, but my phone never stopped ringing for people asking. So I said, I'll make it easy for myself and easier for you guys. So I wrote the ebook, Start Your Podcast Now, in only 3 steps. You can find that ebook at ebooksbyejames.com. Make sure you guys go there to get your copy. Also, make sure you guys follow me and check me out at my website, the dealhealfulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org. That is my main website, which talks about everything that I have going on, including speaker, author, podcasts, workshops, things that I have. And also there's a page to book me in order to have me to come out to talk to your students or your organization as a speaker or a workshop facilitator. Again, that is dealhealfulfill.org, where you can find out more information about me and everything that I have going on. Also, we talked about the podcast ebook, but that is only one of several ebooks that I have. If you go to ebooksbyejames.com, again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. I made it real simple. You can find the ebooks that I have there. I have several ebooks there, including a Males to Men ebook, which is a ebook for young males coming into manhood, and also the core 4, which is the core 4 values that every daughter should get from her father. That ebook is one of the segments that we use on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast when we're talking to other girl dads and talking to daughters about the relationship between fathers and daughters. But you guys can check out to get your own copy of the core 4 and the other ebooks that I have available at ebooksbyejames.com. And just in case, just so you know, if you really like the ebooks, you can become an affiliate of the ebooks on that same website. There's a link that says become an affiliate. And so you can promote the ebooks and you get paid whenever someone buys. So make sure you guys go and check out the ebooks as well. And our inspirational t-shirt line, which is deal2healtees.com. Again, that's deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Excuse me. That is our tagline. You guys can go there and check out our inspirational tees as well as our podcast merch. We have t-shirts with our logo for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as the Girl Dad Discussions podcast there. Again, that's Deal to Heal Tees. That's Deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Last but not least, I have had the opportunity of the last couple of years to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every other month of the year. And we talk about everything regarding forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others. What does it mean to forgive and what the benefits of forgiveness is? I think it is a very important topic that we need to infuse in our lives, in our everyday lives, to make sure that we're forgiven and we're not carrying unnecessary burdens. So you guys can sign up for our free virtual workshops. Again, just go to forgivenessmission.com, or you can just go to Eventbrite and look up the Forgiveness Workshop held by the Forgiveness Mission, and you guys will find it there. So whenever you listen to this podcast, either a workshop just ended or there's one coming up, again, you can sign up again for forgivenessmission.com. Again, that's the forgivenessmission.com. All right. So again, Mannie, I want to say thank you very much for being here. Thank you for coming on and sharing your life stories and your expertise. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, you can go ahead and follow me. I'm typically most active on social on Instagram and LinkedIn at Mannie Canto, at MANNIECANTO. And then also you can check out my website. It's manniecanto.com/mentor if you want to sign up for mentoring with me. And then I can add you to, I also have a WhatsApp group chat to kind of give motivation to people throughout the school year and just through the year as in general. And I guess the final takeaway is something that I typically say all the time is failure isn't final, it's necessary, because true success is standing on top of your failures, not lying underneath them.
I like that. I like that. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealstohealtees.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.